So, first of all, Mr. Modares, thank you very much for your time. And yeah, we have a serious topics to talk about. And the first question will be how can Russian airstrikes on Idlib and Aleppo influence overall dynamic of the Syrian conflict?
First of all, thank you so much for having me again. It's a pleasure to be with you. When we look at this ongoing situation in Syria, the first thing that we should consider is that how these groups actually manage to fulfill these purposes and how they manage to reappear from practically nothing after years. What we should consider is that there is a serious void of power in Syria right now because before this happens, there were three major elements that were somehow securing the stability of Bashar Assad's regime. The Iranian government that now is dealing with lots of problems internally and externally. The Islamic Republic does not have the funds that it once had. The second element that we should consider is Hezbollah, because Hezbollah today is completely paralyzed and they do not have the means to defend Bashar Assad's regime. And eventually, it were the Russians that were keeping Assad in power. And now Russia is quite occupied in Ukraine. So the lack of the presence of these three elements had created a void of power, a vacuum of power, during which these groups, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, managed to reappear from nothing and is now managing to get Idlib, get Aleppo, going through Homs and Hama, and eventually maybe going towards Laziqiya, maybe going towards Deir Zur, and eventually going towards Damascus itself. So, how can the Russian airstrikes change this scenery? It will be effective, but not on a large scale, because you should consider that the HTS has learned their lessons. It's not like they're going to be fully and operationally uh, putting themselves in the way of danger for Russians to take them out. But the problematic thing here is that the Russian airstrikes on Idlib right now can have more civilian casualties than people from the HTS.
So, considering the strategic implication, how is the President Bashar al Assad's leadership position affected by these recent attacks? And could he be the primary target for any further actions?
He can be the primary target for further actions because he's trying so hard to keep his power right now. But unless he comes to an agreement with the United States, with the United Arab Emirates, and with Israel, he cannot manage to keep his power. Because one thing that we know definitely about Syria is that the hand of the Islamic Republic from Syria has been cut, and they can no longer support the Hezbollah through Syria, and they can no longer maneuver militias within Syria and their militants within Syria. This is for sure. But the rest of it, the future of Bashar al Assad, depends on the decision that he's going to make right now. Is he going to go towards Russian and probably have another internal war and a very high number of civilian casualties? Or is he eventually going to go through the way of the Arab League, which is the Abraham Accords, and he's going to have some sort of even unofficial agreement with Israel, with the UAE, and with the US?
And what about that Russian military action in Syria? It's like it's in a way that it's indirect help for Israel because the Syria smuggling weapon is helping Hezbollah. And how can we see that kind of situation now?
You're pointing at a very, very important thing here because when we talk about Hezbollah, we should consider that the back front of Hezbollah is Syria. Let's consider this how the Islamic Republic is going to send weaponry to Hezbollah. They can do it through sea, which is not possible because Israel is quite focused on all the navy and the seaways to Lebanon. They can do it in aerial way, which is again not possible because Israel doesn't allow that. So what the Republic has been doing for the past decades is that they use civilian aircrafts in order to transport the weaponry from Tehran to Damascus. And then from Damascus, they bring all this weaponry by land to Hezbollah. Now that Hezbollah is already paralyzed, has lost its chain of command, and now is losing the support from Syria, this would means that they are going to drain out Hezbollah from all these weapons, and it's going to mean that it will be the end of the most important proxy group of the Islamic Republic.
Can we see like breaking the ceasefire agreement? I mean, the Hezbollah already said that they are accusing the Israel for breaking that peaceful agreement.
It is possible. It is possible because when they came to the understanding about an agreement with Israel, they thought that they would have enough time to regroup and to somehow procure the weaponry that they needed once again. But now, with the changes in Syria, they know that this is not going to happen. So they find themselves in more danger. And as they are cornered, they might be more violent and they might have some sort of different approach against Israel, which means the end of ceasefire.
And what will be the Iranian response for all these situations?
That's an interesting question. You should look at the possibilities that the Islamic Republic has in this moment. Right now, they have lots of internal problems, such as the people and societal uprisings against the regime of people who do not want the Islamic Republic anymore. On the other hand, they have a lot of economic difficulties within the country. We are talking about an inflation that is around 76%. And we are talking about a country that has been isolated completely from the international community and has been posing threats against the international community. The regime in Tehran has ruined the life for the Iranian people, for the people in the region of the Middle East, and for the international order of peace and security as well. Their response will be their eventual and final action in order to somehow save what they call the axis of resistance, but as it appears, the axis of resistance has made its end. So they will no longer have any proxy groups. The country that appears to be trying to have a new proxy group within the region is indeed Turkey, because what we can witness is that Turkey is directly and indirectly supporting the HTS in order to have three main goals within Syria, in order to suppress the Kurds, in order to create a buffer zone for the migrants and refugees between Syria and Turkey, and eventually in order to have a leverage within the Syrian politics.
I always ask in the name of the people, can we see the more human casualties then? I mean, this is like huge escalation.
I'm afraid if Bashar al Assad once again tries to keep his power, there will be a very high number of civilian casualties, and there will be a lot of refugees and internally displaced people. We are talking about millions. Let's not forget what happened the last time Syria had a crisis like this. It could also create an international crisis because these people eventually will try to save themselves from the existing situation, which is dreadful. And this means an extreme wave of migrants towards Europe once again.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.